As most of you know, we have adopted a different approach this year where we pick on a topic, a theme, and have three or four presenters, followed by a session of questions and answers. And today is the third session that we will be discussing the inaugural topic this year, which was Haumai. And it will be Ekul Karji who will be presenting. She has anywhere from 15, 20 to even 30 minutes, depending on what she has. That will be followed by questions from each one of us. We'll go around and have an opportunity to either make an observation or to make a question. So the ask is that if you feel that someone else has actually already raised the question that you wish to, I would request you to just sort of let it pass and take a pass on your turn so that we can get to the second round. Time permitting, we'll do subsequent rounds of questions. So that's basically the format. With that, I'm going to reach out to Ekul Karji. She already has a document, I think, that I can see, and hopefully the rest of you can see as well. With that, Ekul Karji, it's all yours.
I'm going to be honest, I'm so unbelievably nervous about this, so I'm just going to do my best, and I appreciate your patience and your kindness.
You're in families, so.
When I was, thank you for that. When I was starting to look at this topic, having done translating for the last 17 years, my perennial quest is the map of Gurbani. And, when I was studying literary theory in college, one of the things that we learned was that a language has an internal map of reality, and that words mean things in relationship to each other. And people who speak that language have an instinctive insight into the map. But when you go into translation, the problem is you mismap the reality if you don't have a proper understanding of what that map is to begin with in the language that you're starting from. And I think we suffer from that in our understanding of Gurbani from an English perspective, is that things don't necessarily get mapped properly. So what are we really talking about? So when I started looking at this, it was kind of like a treasure hunt in terms of looking at just very specific pieces of text and trying to create the links and the relationships so that the concept of Haumai is illuminated by all these other concepts that are referring to it. So what I'm going to do is just kind of read some of these passages and share some perspectives that I have about what that passage is talking about and why I've mapped it the way that I mapped it here. And hopefully this won't take more than 15 minutes. I'll do my best to do it in 15 minutes, and then tear it apart, question. This was just my first experiment at doing this. So I started with the very famous passage from Asa Devar, Halvich Aya, Halvich Gaya, Halvich Jamia, Halvich Mua, Halvich Aditta, Halvich Leia, Halvich Kartia, Halvich Gaya. You all know this. And what struck me, of course, is that it's about duality, the dualistic vision, that ego is a dualistic experience, that we can be in vice or virtue with ego. We can be in truthful or false in ego. It's not like doing the right thing, the good thing, being true, going to heaven, practicing virtue. It's not like that's the state where ego stops existing, the way that Guru Nanak is talking about it. He's saying that in ego, we play in the duality, and the duality is not just in the experience of life itself, but even beyond that even our experience of life and death, even the fact that we experience life, birth, and we experience death, that we experience heaven, we experience hell, these things that are beyond kind of the normal earthly human existence, even these things come out of Haumai, come out of this identity, the I-dentity. So my identity gives rise to this dualistic experience that goes back and forth, where I can be soiled or I can bathe, I can be foolish or I can be wise. And what he says is this beautiful line, mok mukataki saranajana, that there's an essence that liberates us, that's beyond the duality that we haven't recognized. And as it goes on, you know, Haumai katakata jant upaya. This is another really provocative line, that it's actually the ego, the identity that creates the experience of life, that we are it is the propulsion of that identity that creates our form, that creates our experience. And if we can understand Haumai Buja, if we can deeply understand what this Haumai is about, if we can really examine it, then the doorway out becomes obvious, or becomes something we can perceive. And what I saw wasn't, you know, I know we talk about Hukam a lot, but in this particular passage, the thing that struck me was the word vake. So it ends with Jeha veke teha vake, which is that how we view things is what we become. And so this was my first part of the map. I mapped out Haumai, and I said, look, Haumai is a vake. Haumai is a perspective. Haumai is a perception. Haumai is how we see things. The identity, the eyes, you know, we can play around in English a lot with that. And in that vake of the identity, it gives this rise to the love of duality. Like, we love playing between truth and lying. We love playing between vice and virtue. I mean, we see it all the time. You know, we have a love. We have an attraction. If there wasn't the attraction, we wouldn't be doing it. There's something, you know, maybe enjoyable in the experience, that the identity keeps coming into the form and playing out the polarity, and going back into death and coming back into form and playing out the polarity. Okay, so we're doing that. So when we're looking at the next passage from Asudevar, from Guru Angad Dev Ji, you know, again, it keeps going into this nature of Haumai, and how we're, you know, how does ego arise, and by what discipline is it effaced? And this is the ultimate expression of duality, right? The line that everyone quotes, right? Haumai direk rogaha darupi ismahe, that there's that ego in its, that the Haumai in itself is like the essential dualistic proposition, that it's the disease and the cure at the same time. It gives rise to a dualistic vision, and its essence is duality, that it can be both sickness and the cure simultaneously. So after this, there's this beautiful line, Kirpa kare jai apni tha guru ka shabad kamahe, so that the Guru's Shabad then, to sort of break out of the disease, right? There's got to be a road. And the Guru says, look, it's by kindness and by the Shabad that we start to come out of Haumai. We come out of Haumai through the kindness of God when we get to meet the Shabad. Okay, well, what does that really mean? All right, well, I went to the Anand Sahib, right? There's a beautiful passage at the 25th Pori of the Anand Sahib that's all about Guru Ka Shabad, right? Guru Ka Shabad is talked about in Asudevar. Let's look at the 25th Pori of the Anand Sahib, which is all about Guru Ka Shabad. Guru Ka Shabad ratin hai hira jit jarao, Shabad ratin jit manalaga eo hoa samao. So this notion of the Shabad is posited as a rare and precious gem that's set in diamonds, right? So Guru Ka Shabad is this ratin, this hire, this jewel. And the idea is that manalaga, we want to attach the mind to it. And so here comes the concept of man, which we translate into English as mind. So what I did was I mapped man as kind of the pendulum between Haumai and getting out of Haumai. That man, on the one hand, it can be attached to the Guru Ka Shabad, and it starts this chain reaction of changing the perspective, or it's not attached to the Guru Ka Shabad, and it's then giving rise to this dualistic experience, this love of duality that's not the essence of the game, so to speak. And so, you know, Shabda Seti Manmiliya Sache Laya Bao, that you've got this, the Shabad is going to cause your mind to intermingle with truth. Well, what is the truth, right? Oh, well, we have to figure that out. What is the sache? What is that word referring to? So, you know, and it ends, Kahe Nanak Shabad Ratana, he I mean, Guru Angad just says it over, I mean, Guru Amar Das just says this over and over again. This is a jewel. This is a priceless jewel. This Shabad is a jewel. Attach your mind to it. Attach your mind to it. Okay, so mind, man. What talks about man? Well, again, this is from Guru Amar Das, and this line that everyone quotes, Manitu Jot Sarup hai, you know, I've never really looked into where it comes from. I've heard it like for 20 years, but I never asked myself, well, where does that come from? And it comes from this 10 stanza chant on 440 and 441 in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib that's all about the mind, which was fascinating, and I thought I got to go back and study that deeper. But this particular line comes from the 5th stanza specifically, and it's Manitu Jot Sarup hai apna mool pachan, Manahar ji tera naal hai gurmati rang maan, mool pachane tha suhu jane hai, Maran जीवन की सोजी होए, गुर प्रसादी एको जाने था दूजा पाव न होए, मनसांत I जीवदाई था होआ परवान, eo के है नानक मनतु जोत स्वरूप है अपना मूल पहचान. So this such that we're trying to get to, so through the Guru Ka Shabad, there is this this perspective that changes. Okay, so Haumai comes from a perspective, the Guru Ka Shabad changes the perspective to this sache. And what is the sache? The sache is what's being spoken about in this particular verse, that the man is actually a form of the divine light. That, hey, recognize that you're the divine light. And if you recognize that, you're going to gain insight into this mystery of duality that you're actually the cause of. Your life and death is coming from you. It's not coming from anywhere else. You know, we've seen that in Asa Devar. You're the one who's giving rise to the experience of life and death. Nobody and nothing outside of you is giving rise to that experience. So if you want to gain insight into this mystery that you're trapped in, mind, you have to stop getting caught in the game of the polarity that is what Haumai essentially embodies, is the love of duality, and start identifying with the light, start identifying with the Jot. Start seeing yourself as the form of the Jot. And in this, that attachment to duality is going to disappear. So the love of duality will go. The way you manifest your love of duality in your existence will disappear when you see that you are actually the light. This man has to recognize the divine light at its base. Now, one of the best ways you can understand a term is to say, well, what's the opposite? Because in language, we like tall and short define each other. If you just had the word tall and not the word short, you wouldn't understand what was going on. If you just had the word, you know, big and not small, you wouldn't understand what's going on. So it's antonyms that define the range of an experience in a language. And so I was asking myself, okay, what's the antonym to Haumai? And what came to me was Jiwan Mukt. Jiwan Mukt is the antonym. And what talks about Jiwan Mukt? Well, there's a beautiful passage in Sukhmani, and I just, again, went to this small place, this the 9th Ashtapadi and the 7th verse, that talks all about Jiwan Mukt. Prabhiki agya atam hitave, Jivan Mukt so kahave. And I know you guys are going to forgive me for my, you know, pronunciation. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do the best I can. Tesa harak tesa usasog, sada anand te nahi biog. Tesa suvaran tesi usamakti, tesa amrit tesi bikakarti. So what this passage is doing is basically saying there's this antonym to Haumai, and the antonym to Haumai is Jiwan Mukt. And the Jiwan Mukt person is still experiencing duality. It's still in the play of, you know, feeling cheerful, then grief. It's got gold, then clay. He gets nectar, she gets nectar, and then she gets poison. But the difference is, Sada Anand Te Nahi Biyog, that that the person who's Jiwanmukt doesn't experience separation because of it. There's no, because the mind has recognized that it's the form of the light. Therefore, I'm never separated from the divine light because I've recognized it in myself. And when I can recognize it in myself, then this is where hukam comes in. Prabhaki agya atam hitave. Like all of a sudden, I can love. I can be enamored with whatever. I mean, we can say Prabhaki agya. It's like whatever happens, whatever the Creator does, I'm going to be okay about, because I'm never separated from the essence of the divine in myself. And by not being separated, then I can go through the duality of gold and then clay, of poison and then amrit, of being poor and then a king, and still be in bliss and not be bothered by it. So this is the change in perspective. This is the vake, I think, that Guru Nanak is referencing in Asa Devar, is the change of perspective is through the Shabad, which is a jewel, we come to know the truth, which is the divine light inside of ourselves. It gives us the ability to live the opposite of Haumai, which still involves polarity, but it involves a completely different experience of surrender of love and bliss. Whereas Haumai is just being in love with the play, and you get pulled one way, pulled another, and pulled one way, and pulled another. And even life and death, you know, are just the manifestations of the Haumai, the experience. If you move beyond Haumai, you move beyond the experience of death, and that's said in so many places in Gurbani. The last little point that I want to bring up here, and then I'll stop, is that when I was translating the Anand Sahib, you know, the fact that the Shabad was called a ratan, a hire, ratan, this diamond, this jewel, I thought of it as a poetic metaphor. But when I worked on this map, actually this week, all of a sudden I went, it's not poetic at all. Because what do jewels do? Jewels, when we wear jewelry, they're beautiful because they amplify sunlight. They take the sunlight and they facet it and amplify it and make it beautiful and visible. If it were, you know, like we live in sunlight all the time, we notice it, we don't notice it, the sunset's beautiful, the sun rises beautiful, but a jewel that we wear on ourselves captures that light and makes it incredibly visible to ourselves and to other people. And I realized that when the purpose of the Shabad is to help us shift our perspective to see this truth that Jot is at the root of our mind, of the man, then all of a sudden it's not metaphorical at all. It's very real. It's like through the Shabad, you will amplify and see your light. And that's the key. Meditate and attach to the Shabad to see the light. And that takes you into the antonym of Haumai. But Haumai is when the mind isn't attached to that, doesn't recognize its own light, and is in itself giving rise to birth and death, heaven and hell, and the play of duality. So that is my presentation for you all today, and my mapping of the term Haumai, and I will do my best to listen to what you have to say and answer any questions. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Kunkaji. That was very, very nice. We really appreciate it. First, I will go to
Sanjay, I think I am amazed with this presentation. It is a very good perspective, and you have connected the dots very well. So, and I completely agree. I think it's good. I don't have any questions at this time, and I'm still trying to, and it is very well presented, and all the dots are very well connected. So thank you.
Anji, thank you. Anji,
Ravinder, can you do the rounds, please? I have to step aside for about 5 seconds.
Sure. Anji,
hello. Yeah, that's a very nice presentation. It's a very nice way of bringing things out. I don't have any question at all about the subjects that you brought up, the mapping and all that you brought up. I think that's very enlightening. I had a broad, general, practical question about Haumai in general, which is, you know, in the American environment, the professional environment that we all work in, to be successful, You have to promote yourself, promote your ideas. You have to tell people why you should be promoted, why somebody should go with your idea versus another one, someone else's in a competitive environment. You have to sell your company or your products or whatever. And the practical question is, how do you go through all that and be successful without indulging in Haumai, without reinforcing your Haumai?
That's a really good question. I mean, there are two things that come to mind is that there are different passages in Gurbani that I really love. I love all of them, of course, but where the Guru says, if you attach your mind to the Shabad, then all your affairs get arranged for you. And I think that that is the key, is that when the mind is really attached to the Shabad and vibrating the Shabad, all kinds of things can happen. Success can happen, prosperity can happen, but you have the sensitivity to recognize that the creator is the doer, that you're in a co-creative relationship with the universe. Your identity is not actually the cause of it, that it's the agya, it's the hukam. So, and the other thing is that, I think one of the things that was fascinating for me when I was doing this map is that the person who's Jivan Mukh doesn't get out of the experience of polarity. They're just kind of always in a transcended place. And so I think that's the thing the Guru is calling us to do that's so unique, is how can you actually engage in the world and the game of the world and still stay transcended? And so it's about having your own practice and transcending in your own practice, I think, that gives you the space in your psyche where you can be transcendent when it comes to, your daily activities. So that's what I would offer in response to that.
Okay, thank you. That's a good answer.
Thank you, Vijay. Hanji, Ravindra Vijay.
Hanji, thank you, Ekunkar, for that very lovely presentation. I just have an observation on what Indramohan Vijay just said. What strikes me is we talk about things like career development and how do you sort of, you have to assert yourself. I think the way I think about it is, how did the gurus accomplish so much? I mean, they built cities, they built institutions, and surely it takes a lot more to do that than to, let's say, make a few bucks or maybe advance in a professional career. So there's got to be a secret somewhere, and I think Ekunkar hit the nail on the head. It's the feeling that you are a co-creator, not necessarily the creator. I would also suggest that the thing for an individual to do is to recognize what talent or what inclinations he or she might have. I think that is the key for us to be successful here, because once you recognize those, then that is your contribution. But my question for Ekunkarji, so you've talked at some length about duality and how duality seems to be the underlying problem, but also that this sort of whole duality is also created by the creator, if you want to call him that or her that. So the question for you is duality then a necessity for us to experience the world this way and then figure out, what we are all about? Or is it something, or is it a choice?
Well, I think that what I would offer is that the entire experience of existence is based on the polarity, right? So that we exist in call, we exist in time, but we're trying to experience a call. We're trying to experience the reality that's beyond time. And it's that push and pull of the polarities that gives us the chance, to break free. But we can be caught in the push and pull of the polarities, or we can, detach the mind to the Shabad and start to transcend the push and pull of the polarities. But I think that it's kind of like there's either, right, sirgun, nirgun, there's either existence or non-existence. You're either in form or formless, and there's only one consciousness that's truly formless. So I think as long as we're in form, the pull of the polarities is inevitable. How we handle it is the question that we have to deal with every single day, and that we deal with when we die. We take our last breath. It's like, how did I handle that? So that's, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's kind of how what I would offer.
No, that helps. That helps. Thank you. No, I appreciate the perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Virji. Anji, Rana Virji.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Anji. First of all, thank you, Ingaji. Wonderful presentation. And the beauty of these presentations is that it brings different perspectives for us to go back and relish those and reflect on those things. And on that point, I really appreciate your presentation. Question, I think one question came. Excuse me. Before I get to a question, I would just ask you to help me understand. I know the word duality we use all the time. People have different concept or perception of what duality is. Could you expand on what is your understanding of this term? It is used so often. Param is used, duality is used like that. That's one thing which I would like you to expand. Then I'll follow up with my second request, please.
Well, that's a good question. So what I would offer from, the research I was doing this week, for the presentation, is that duality is ultimately where the mind itself gets pulled in one direction and the other, and doesn't have any power to not be pulled. In other words, I experience myself as being a virtuous person one moment. I'm giving charity. Then the next moment I'm yelling at, a shopkeeper who made me angry. Like the mind gets caught in one experience than the other. And one experience is maybe more pleasurable than the other, or, darker or lighter, but the mind can't help but be in it. And what this state of Anand, right? We have a whole body on the Anand Sab. And one thing, so when I was working on the Anand Sab, there was a lecture that Yogi Bhajan once gave, and he defined Anand as the state where your every action represents your soul. It was a very unique way of, it wasn't just about bliss, because that's, again, we map it to this English word bliss. But the Sri Singh Sahib mapped the word Anand to this idea that no matter what's going on around you, you're always representing your truest self. And I think that gets to this notion of the mind recognizing that it's the form of divine light, and so coming from the most authentic, genuine place. And when you're in your authenticity, when you're in your true, representing your true authentic self, then this play of the duality doesn't bother you, because you're just being true to you. You're just being true to yourself. And whereas the mind can get caught one way or the other, Anand is the state where you move beyond that and you're just true and true and true to what's inside of you. So that's how I would kind of offer my understanding of duality at this point in time.
Well, thank you very much. Can I follow up on something, please?
Sure, please.
I think there's a very good question or comment by Inder Mohan Singh ji, and followed by Ravinder ji, also made the same point. The point is, in this world, we have to be competitive, we want to excel, and the Haumai becomes a key player in that. When I think about that, I didn't think about this one, but as the comment was made, I had to sit back and reflect on that one. My take on that one is, the world may be competitive. World may be very jealous outside. For us to excel, it does not mean that we should lose our integrity. We should lose our honesty. We should lose our compassion. There have been leaders in the world, Mandela, other people like that, who lived in this world, but they didn't go for the competitive nature of that to excel, to become CEO of a company or something like that. So my take on that, because I face that all the time, And we become what the word I use, strategic maneuvers. The word is glorified word. We use diplomacy. We use that. But I call the people are still manipulating other people, but very strategically. So my take on that one is that in, although the world is very competitive, we can still have our home in control and maintain our integrity. This is the way I approach it. I think about that. Anyways, that was a comment actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Anji, IG uncle. Anji, IG uncle.
Yeah.
Anji, any question or observation?
Couple of comments I would make, brief comments. This has been, pardon?
Go ahead.
Is that clear enough?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay. There are a couple of comments I would make. A lot of questions, areas have been talked about. The latest is duvida and duality and that sort of a thing. I wonder, I mean, why can't I look at duvida and duality more as a process? If you're talking about a state of mind to be achieved, the state of mind to be reached. Now that is a process and a journey. And there are many stops in between and stations in between. And duvida is that process that you're going through. So not necessarily undesirable, a very important integral part of the process of the journey. That's the way I would look at that. Now, ego has a pervasive presence in a Sikh life. I wonder about how could it be considered pure evil when Gurbani also tells you that it says Haumai ke upai upje kit sanjit jai. In other words, where does it come from? And of course, comes from the Creator. So it wasn't an evil put in us by the Creator. It has a purpose. And Diragro with the Daru bhi smile. The panacea lies within the disease. So it's not a matter of uprooting it. It's a matter of making sure that that sense of self, which is the ego, and that's what behavioral scientists tell us. It defines a definition of sense of self, that it does not become the ruler of yourself and remains the process. The sense of self, without a sense of self, you really can't do very much either. And a sense ego or identity does exist and it's perfectly reasonable. In any dialogue, in any conversation, there is you and I. Even if you talk to the Creator, there's the you and I. If you read Kabir, he makes that clear. So I think that mind is not so many questions, but what shall I say? Observations. So to me, it's not a matter of uprooting it. It's not a matter of calling it. It's more a matter of disciplining it and using it so that it doesn't morph into something wrong, doesn't morph into narcissism. And I think what we mean is narcissism is evil that we need to get rid of. We mistranslate ego. Ego is desirable to some degree, narcissism is not. And that's perhaps what we should use. And I will yes, I'll have other comments for later. We'll see how things go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anji,
Vaji Khalsa, Vaji Fateh. Kunkarji, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and more importantly, learned a lot from it. The most important thing I actually learned has nothing to do with Haumai. It's how to build that map that you actually built. I think that was a very good skill that I learned today. Thank you very much. I think a lot has been said about Haumai, and it can be as clear, I think, so as it can be right now in my mind. There's still a long way to go, but I don't think any more questions or discussions will clear it in my mind further. My only maybe question to you is the origin of Haumai. I saw that you chose not to cover it, but would you like to touch upon that as to where did it come from to begin with?
Well, I mean, it's funny because that's what Guru Angad asks in Asa Devar, right? Let me find my notes here. Haumai kituhu upaja, kitasanjam ehijai. Like he asks, where does this thing called ego come from? And he doesn't actually answer the question. Like, so I think that's a fascinating observation, is that Guru Angad himself says, where does ego arise from? And then there's no answer. There's just the answer that, well, it's a disease, but the cure is inside of it. And by grace, you can connect with the Guru's Shabad, and that's how your suffering will leave. Like the Guru gives the process for how the discipline to come out of it. He answers the question by what discipline is it, is it sort of, do you deal with it? But he never answers the question of where it comes from. And so I'm not going to try and answer what Guru Angad couldn't answer, but I am going to observe that Guru Nanak was saying that it's ego itself that gives rise to the experience of birth and death. That the ego itself is why we are coming into form. So I think in that way, Haumai is a way different term than the Western concept of ego. And that's what I mean by mapping it, because when Guru Nanak is saying Haumai is actually the cause of your created existence, he's not talking about the Freudian ego that the Western psychologists talk about. He's talking about something else. And what is that? And how do we approach that? So I don't have an answer, but I also don't know that the Gurus ever answered it clearly. But that's where I think Haumai and ego are a mismap because of what's being said here about that Haumai is the cause of the fact that you even were born. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's kind of what I can share about it.
Thank you. It's definitely helpful. Harinder, that's it.
Thank you, Veerji. Anji, Gurdeep uncle, Montreal.
Anji, Sat Sri Akal ji. I am very much convinced with the Concur presentation. Even I learned something, very new thing I learned, that here jit jadao and how the environment affects. It's something very new for me, but very informative, very impressive with this. Haumai kitho ek mai jane panch puta. This is the answer to the Veerji who was just having the question, Haumai ai kitho hai. Ek mai jane panch puta kaam ko lo mohankar te uthon fir Haumai paida hui, Haumai kar jant paya. Haumai jat tak, as long as we are in Haumai, we have to take the birth, rebirth, death, birth, rebirth. It has to be finished completely. Jivan Mukt Jivan Hona. If you want to be Jivan Mukt, as Ekunkar said, then there should be no lace of Haumai, even little bit. So this is the whole process mentioned Gugan sir. But I think we have to practice, have to practice more. But very good presentation, very much convinced. Everything she touched my heart, and everything she said is out of Gurbani, which I read so many times, but we never get that much thought to it, the meaning of it. So anyway, duality and dugda, and there's another thing. This is the same thing, duality. This whole creation is created from the duality, which puts us into dugda. And then one point, when we suffer, as she said, with the polarization system of the mind, when we start suffering, then it made us think back of our Father, the Creator. So then how the mind has to bring back to that Creator so that we can be peaceful, we can live peacefully. That's the process, but Ekunkar mentioned. I think I'll be able to practice more or read more about it. Thank you very much, Professor Kunkarji. Keep that spirit.
My blessing, my blessing.
Thank you, Uncle. Anji, Gurjeet ji, Australia.
Hanji Veji.
Anji Veji.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for a nice presentation, Vikunkar. I think that answer which we were saying that Guranga doesn't know, the answer is spread out within Gurbani. Uncle Ji has given one reference that he knows it. Gurmukhs know from where it starts and how to end it. So we have to research it from where it starts. So you were saying about that 25th Paudi, Gur ka Shabd Ratan hai. So why it is Gur ka Shabd so important? What is your understanding about Gur ka Shabd to remove the Haumai from within us?
Well, I think this is where I would actually go into, and this may not be everyone's understanding, but the science of nod. Like when I look at the term ekonkar, for me, it means out of the oneness comes the vibration that creates the reality. Like that's how I relate to ekonkar. And that ong is the key. How we vibrate is how we manifest. And the mun on its own has a certain vibration. You know, it's vibrating towards the creation. It's vibrating into time and space. It's vibrating into experiences. And what the Shabd does is it sets a different vibration for the mind to relate to. It sets, it challenges the mind. It redirects the mind. It takes the mind to a higher frequency. So like in my study of the aspect of Nod and Gurbani, if you look at the Japji, the Kunds of Japji Sahib, you know, Gyan Kund is where Nod is, sort of the vibration. And then Sadam Kund and Kadam Kund is where Bani is. And to me, I've understood that to mean that Bani is a very refined kind of sound that actually takes you into mastery, it takes you into union, it takes you to the realm of the angels, that Bani actually creates a very unique form, both on the earth and beyond the earth. And so when the Guru is saying, attach your mind to the Shabd, he's saying, get your mind out of its own frequency, which is creating your experience of life and death and the polarity and the duality, and get your mind vibrating at this more subtle level, and it will open up the doorway to get out of the Haumai.
So you have introduced the word Nad here. Is Nad same as Gur ka Shabd, or is Nad different to Gur ka Shabd?
I would say that Nad refers to vibration and sound, and Guru Ka Shabd is a very specific kind of sound, very specific vibration. So Nad is all sound, whatever the sound is, right? Kachibani, Sachibani. But Bani and Guru Ka Shabd is a very specific, refined sound that can take you into a more subtle experience that is beyond the Haumai.
And where you put Gurbani in that context? Is Gurbani Gur ka Shabd or something else?
That's a good question.
So can I suggest that we seem to be digressing off onto another branch here. So can we kind of stay germane to the discussion to Haumai and her presentation, and then you can take this offline with her.
Yeah, I think it's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to research
That's
it more.
fine.
Yeah.
All right. And one more, when we say Haumai dirgh rog hai, daru bhis mahe, how you comprehend this pankti, daru bhis mahe? How you relate it to Haumai? And where is the daru and who has to take the daru?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking. Well, I would say the Haumai itself has to take the remedy. You know, no, I would say it's the mun. Like when I think about the map and I think about Guru Nanak saying the purpose is to change the vake, to change the perspective. That's the way I've understood it and mapped it. That the cure is the shabad, and the mind has to take that cure so that the vake can shift and the Haumai dissolves into Jivan Mukt.
All right, thank you very much. Anji, I'm done.
Okay, Harvinder.
Vijay, please take over. Harvinder.
Thank you very much. Harvinder's done round one. He could have done round two, but he has chosen to pass the baton on to me. So we have about 10 or 15 minutes left, and I'm going to take advantage of this and just comment on a couple of questions. So, and then I'll do a quick round. Ekunkarji, I think the idea of mapping is certainly very important to us because we've now talked about several terms here. Haumai, not mapping to ego. A lot of us have talked about it. We all kind of, I think, are quite convinced that this is not the proper mapping. And so that's one reason we want to stick to using the term Haumai all the time. The other is, we talked about duality. And I know that Paramjit Singh Ranaji had a question on what duality meant. So just very quickly, Vijay, from a philosophy, it's a philosophical term in the philosophy of mind, and it's actually originated with René Descartes, a French philosopher. The idea here is that that mind and matter are actually two different substances. That's the root. I don't want to go into any detailed discussion of it here because I'm not that up on it, but I can certainly clarify what dualism or duality is defined as in the world of philosophy of mind. That mental phenomena is non-physical. That's really what it means. And so here's another problem that we have, because duality does not really tie back to dubida. That's quite another term, but that's for another time. I just wanted to throw this out there. And I think to Dr. Ajay Singh's observation that this is not something that we want to uproot. Clearly not, because we wouldn't be able to uproot it, even if we wanted to, but harnessing it, as he says, is probably the key here. So with that said, I'm going to go through another round if people have any follow-up questions. So Dilpreet Singh.
Yeah, I think I was also just thinking about one thing, that when it is originated or how it is implanted. So the line which comes to my mind is that Nanak mein je bujhe ta Haumai kahe na koi. That when we are not operating in hukam, I think that is the time when it is originated and it grows. And once we come into hukam again, and which we will be discussing, I think, down the line, and that is how, as Ajay uncle is saying, that we change its direction and we use it. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilpreet. And Ekunkarji, I just also wanted to very quickly, in the line that you quoted from Guru Angad, Haumai ha jata hai, Haumai, there is a following line that I think might give us some clue as to the answer, because here it says, Haumai kitho upjay, kit sanjam eh jaye. And then the following line is Haumai eho hukam hai, paya kit firaye, which suggests that it is actually hukam that creates Haumai. And it is in this Haumai that we are then, it's almost like rolling the dice, if you will. It's setting the initial conditions for this system. So I think I just wanted to, share that with you, that you may want to consider looking at that line as, Haumai eho hukam hai, paya kit firaye. Let's see who's on next. Indamon Virji, coming back to you.
I don't have anything else to add at this point. Thank you.
Hanji, Dr. Ajay Singh.
Well, that was the point I was making when I said to you that Haumai is also the creation of the creator. And
well, that's the point we were trying to make here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Any other questions for Rekunkar?
No, not at the moment. But the matter is not finished.
Well, we know that. We know that, but I have an eye on the clock as well.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Okay. Ranavirji, do you have any further questions, follow-ups?
No, I don't have any other question. The comment you made is very good. I'm not interested in knowing about duality, but I'm more interested in understanding Duvida. That is my focus. Duality, okay, that's philosophical thing. I don't want to go into that. And that
No,
is
but we use the term, so we need to be aware of what we are using.
Okay.
Yeah. Hanji, Ripudaman Singh ji?
No question on Haumai. That's it, Virji.
Okay.
At the end of this, maybe we need to revisit and figure out whether we need the fourth session or not.
We could do that. Let me very quickly cover the panelists again. Gurdeep Singh Virji, Montreal.
Hanji, I have 2 points to say here. Siv Shakti Apa Paike. Paramatma Siv, Shakti is Maya. The Haumai hi bandana, Haumai has a special duty. Haumai hi bandana fir juni pai. It's a game. Haumai won't let you get out of this world. It will keep you back, death and birth. She is doing a special job. Agyakari Kini Maya, Sukhni Saab. She is in the order of the creator. So how can we say it's not easy to get rid of it? But the realization is even good enough once we realize that we are working some other forces. I can say it's devil force, because it makes you more wrongdoing rather than good doing. So then, but Inkukar explained is very good. And this is mentioned, who created Siv? Siv is who is Siv? He's the creator. Siv Shakti, what Shakti? Shakti is the Maya. And what Maya? She is the mother of 5 elements, which we discussed before, Kam, Kro, Loma. And what is their job? Their job is not to let these people get out of it. Then who will help us? All those
thank you very much.
Came, they help us. I don't know, I may be wrong or right, but this is how I understood, and she explained. Thank you.
Thank you for your observations. I think I'm left with Gurjeet Singh Virji. Any final comments?
Hanji Virji, Haumai, I think we just started with that line. Haumai eho hukam hai paiye ke to firai. The Haumai is actually colliding with the universal hukum. So that's why it's not merging into the universal hukum, but it is keeping itself away. And it's created by us. We are the kartas who created the Haumai. And if we understand we are in Haumai, we will just merge. We'll clear it up, and then we'll merge with the universal will. That's my observation, essentially.
Thank you, Jivi. So we wanted to save about 3 or 4 minutes to address the question that Ripudaman raised. He was the next speaker on Haumai, and I think that may be the reason he's brought this up. Do we need to have another session on Haumai next week, or should we take a pause and move on to the next? I want to just hear from everyone. Harvinder Singh, what's your thought?
Anish, I think I'm okay either way, but we can have like as many sessions on Haumai, because more and more we do every week, we learn some new stuff. Like so far, all the 3 presentations, we learned something new. So I will be okay if Ripudaman is already working on it and have a different take on it, and we can always learn from it.
All right. So Ripudaman, you're not off the hook.
Okay, I'll try my best.
All right. So we have a whole list of topics here, but my suggestion was that Hukum seems to be a logical sort of a topic to follow Haumai. And unless anyone has an objection to that, that will be our next topic. Not the next week. Next week, Ripudaman will speak about Haumai, and then we will conclude this theme and then move on to Hukum. What we will need is volunteers for Hukum.
Before you go on, Hanji, before you go on, can I make a comment here, please?
Hanji, please.
Yes, next week I'm looking forward to hearing from Ripudaman G, and I think he's going to make the presentation. That's great. And after listening to everybody, and I thought I would like to make the fifth presentation of Haumai to tell you how much I don't know, so that I can learn from you. I'm thinking about that today, putting together a presentation, but I need some time, so I would wait after the presentation made by Gurbani. I would like to make a presentation if you are open to that.
No, I'm fine with that. I mean, does anybody have any? Only if you have an objection. Otherwise, we'll have Paranjit Singh Ranavirji do the fifth presentation. I'm completely open to that.
Okay, I would love to do that.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
So then our next 2 weeks are set. With that, thank you very much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. See you next week. Thank you, Ekankarji.
My blessing. Thank you for asking me.